This was a split screen many Americans saw on Friday. On the right there, you've got President Trump. He met with the Queen of England for tea. That was capping a tumultuous few days in England. On the left, the Justice Department announcing new charges against Russian military officers meddling in the 2016 election. Those charges, of course, stem from the investigation led by special counsel Robert Mueller. 12 Russians have been charged with hacking computers of Democratic Party organizations, including the Clinton campaign. The indictment says the Russians launched an effort to hack Hillary Clinton's email on July 27, 2016. That's an important date, the very same day that candidate Trump asked Russia to dig for missing Clinton emails. Take a listen.
I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
The special counsel's charges came just 2 days before President Trump sits down with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And there's new pressure on the president to confront Putin about Russia's role in the 2016 election. Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake tweeted, "Election interference is not a question to be asked of Vladimir Putin, but a statement to be made to Vladimir Putin. You interfered in our elections." Fellow Arizona Republican John McCain said in a statement, if President Trump is not prepared to hold Putin accountable, the summit in Helsinki should not move forward. Michael Graham is in Boston. He's a CBSN political contributor. He's also a columnist for the Boston Herald and politics editor at nhjournal.com. Michael, Friday's indictments, myriad ways, but walk us through how they changed the political environment for President Trump ahead of a meeting with Putin.
Yeah, this adds a new layer to it because the first layer, the one we're used to, is how do the Trumpies feel about it? They love the fact that there's no collusion, evidence at all, so they're going to talk about that all day. The people who hate Trump love it because it's Russia, Russia, Russia. And I also think it's important for people to realize this is an official statement backed by a grand jury that not Russian bad actors, not some troll farm, but the Russian government, the Putin regime, did interfere with our elections. They hacked the computers of our candidates, and that should outrage everybody, Republican, Democrat. But now you had this other layer, which, as a friend of mine who's involved in politics said today in very in language I can't use on TV, basically, what the bleepity bleep is Rod Rosenstein doing, releasing this stuff 3 days before the summit? Because that does create problems for the American president. The fact that President Trump is beside the point. That it's hard to see how that's a win. The evidence wasn't going anywhere. They could have easily released this, a week later or a week coming up. And so you wonder, is this more of the problem of Washington that in a lot of ways got Trump elected in the first place, of people who nobody can seem to put America as the priority as a whole. It's partisanship and vendettas and inside the Beltway, blah, blah, blah. That's one of the things that I think concerns people about this release.
Well, putting America and American policy at the center of this conversation, Trump, in his last big summit meeting with, of course, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, he had a goal. The goal was securing a promise of denuclearization. He walked out of that summit saying that goal had been accomplished. It was a major concession. What's the goal of this Putin meeting, and what concession might Trump claim to have gotten?
I've heard about 17 foreign policy experts in the past 24 hours try to answer that question, and no one has an answer. We know what Vladimir Putin wants. He is really being hurt by sanctions. They matter. There's a reason why in that bizarro meeting during the campaign at the hotel we all know about, that was supposed to be dirt on Hillary, it turned out to be about the Magnitsky Act. Those sanctions back then were hurting. Well, now President Trump has added a new layer of sanctions on people right around Putin, and those sanctions hurt. So that's one of the things that Vladimir Putin will be focused on. But why is our president going there? What is it he's looking to do? If he has a plan, I haven't heard it reported anywhere. None of the foreign policy smart people I listen to have said it. So I really don't know. Much in the same way of what were you going into North Korea specifically for? Trump left with a vague statement that the North Koreans are already breaking. What's going to happen with Russia? The same thing?
Trump and Putin will appear for a joint press conference after the meeting. And when you boil it all down, that may be the point of the whole trip. What sort of moment does that represent? The Russian and American flags lined up in an alternating fashion behind two guys at a podium. What happens?
Well, what's going to happen is if Trump stays to form is he's going to say lots of nice things about Vladimir Putin while he's standing there, and that's what he's going to do. What should happen is that President Trump should confront Vladimir Putin on national, right there live. You interfered in our election. I want everyone to know that in our meeting, I presented evidence about you interfering in our election. I know you interfered in our election. We're not here to debate it. I'm just here to tell you it better not happen again. There are a lot of good things would come from that. Unfortunately, Trump won't do it, I don't think. And for the lamest of reasons, he conflates Russia, knowing that Russia messed with our election, with Trump didn't really win it. And I don't understand. I want to have a summit of all the people who are wrapped up in this, the idiots who think there was some kind of collusion and that Russia stole the election. They didn't. And the Trump people who are terrified to admit that Russia did something because they think that'll mean he's not really president. All these things are true. Hillary was a terrible candidate. Russia messed with our elections. Trump, is good at mobilizing his base. Those are all true at the same time, but people are afraid of conceding the other team's truth.
Yeah. Now, Michael, you've got a piece coming out for us. It's going to be on CBSNews.com, where you identify something that you're calling McCarthyism 2.0. What is that?
So a very disturbing tweet got spread around widely today by someone who's really active in the Democratic Party. I believe we have the tweet for everyone to see, which he talks about, let's make a list of the people who were part of selling the people in Yale who are basically Brett Kavanaugh, the soon-to-be Supreme Court justice, is a graduate of Yale, and saying we need to remember them, we need to punish them. They should never be able to work in a Democratic administration again if they enable Brett Kavanaugh. Well, Brett Kavanaugh is, by everyone's estimation, a completely qualified judge. There's a fight going on about the politics of the Supreme Court, and I understand that. That's a separate issue. Backing Brett Kavanaugh is not backing Donald Trump. He's a different guy. And the idea that you would build an enemies list and that you would call being bipartisan an unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
Well, our democracy just doesn't work that way. And there's another recent article from a few months ago where some other activists on the left said the solution for Americans' politics is California. What happened in California? The Democrats completely won. They're virtually, it's like 65% of the California legislature is Democrat. Republicans have no power. They do nothing. And that's the only acceptable outcome, is total defeat. Once again, that's not how you talk about your fellow members of a democracy. That's how the USSR and America talked about each other in an existential fight called the Cold War. And that's what really concerns me. How do you go forward if that's the philosophy?
Yeah, it was a little bit odd. Even before Kavanaugh was named as the nominee, there was talk about how Democrats are going to fight the nominee. Well, who's it going to be? Anyway, a lot to mull over. Good thing we have a weekend ahead of us. Michael Graham, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.